Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Justin of Justin and Max Games, and I'm here to do a two-player only review of Uluk recipe book instead of rule book. I love it. Um, what do I think about this game? I really like it. It works wonderfully at two players. So I'll give you the story with this game and my comments and suggestions and so forth as we go along on this little live stream. I was going to do an actual full produced video of this game because I think it's worth it. I just don't have the time. I thought I would be able to do it tomorrow, but I have a recording session going on, so I forgot about it. And then I just remembered when someone emailed me and said, "See you tomorrow at noon." So here's the story with Uluk: is that we got this as a gift, and so this box came in the mail, and it said Warsaw, Poland, and I was like, "Uh-oh, this is an Eastern European board game." I'm all into the Eastern European heavy board games. Mind was it Mind Clash games and so many from Poland, Great Wall, Czech Republic. All of these games from Eastern Europe, I just tend to really gravitate towards. And so when I opened up the box and I saw these cool minis, which I decided to paint, I did them somewhat like the standees, which are really nice too. I always paint games if they come in with the models before we play, and that's always a kind of pressure situation because what if I paint all the things and spend hours and hours and hours and hours, and I don't end up liking the game too much? But there was something about this one as soon as I opened up the box that I liked about it. The art. Let me just start off with the art. People often talk about the art at the very end. The art in this game is just really wonderful. All of the we got all of the Kickstarter stuff, all of the expansions and everything like that. And the cards are quite beautiful and very evocative and very clear. So I started learning the game, and right off the bat, I'll say that the game takes place in 6 rounds, and this is two-player only. The two-player only, all right. And I learned the rules as best as I could from the rule book. I didn't really watch any of the playthroughs online. And by round 2, I said, "I'm not having fun. I'm just literally feeding my people." If there are games that are about, like, sort of just upkeep, this is definitely in the upkeep, game mode. And I was like, "Well, what am I doing?" And even my wife looked at me like, she's like, "What am I doing? How am I getting points?" So by round 2, I was like, "Oh," I was a little bit disappointed. By round 4 of the first game, I said, "This is actually quite good." Once you understand, and now that's one of my criticisms of the rule book, the recipe book, is I don't think it's made entirely clear what's important and how to kind of manage the game. There are games by Vital Lacerda. Everyone knows Vital Lacerda games, like Weather Machine that we just played this year. Wonderful game too. And as you go through the rule book, there are a couple of tips here and there, especially for just kind of starting to understand how everything interlocks. Now, this rule book is very clear. It tells you exactly what to do. And I almost wish it's a thin rule book. So it's not like one of these huge things that you think, oh my God, I'm going to have to go through something so much like I did with Perseverance in a previous video, but was also absolutely worth it. Um, I almost wish this rule book was a little bit longer. I think it needs some examples. All right, so it tells you to do this thing. All right, I've read it. Let me see a couple of examples of it, with pictures of what the board looks like and what I would do. Some tips, some little, boxes that would say, hey, this is a good way forward with the game. I understood it by about round 4. My wife said she understood what was going on by round 5. And by game number 2, we were totally into it and understood the nuances for the most part of what we were trying to achieve. And I think it's for those of you who haven't played this game before, and this is a first designer, I believe, or a first time designer, if I'm correct, Dominic Sidorek. I don't think he has had any previous games, but it's really good. It's really quite good. And the artist, Primishla Gul, I think I'm pronouncing that, is excellent, excellent, excellent. So I'm going to give you some tips going into the game for people that are playing this for the first time or haven't played it for the first time. Tip number one is you need inventions. Those invention cards, that's not something that's just sort of cool. And oh yeah, you can get some points at the end of the game for, set collections of different with different symbols of them. But basically, your inventions that you're going to collect are going to give you basically a saving mechanism. You're starting off in a two-player game. You start off with 6 tribe members out of a possible was it 9 or 10? And I think it's 9. I think you have a total of 9. And you are deploying them on the board to get materials, to transform materials, to feed your people at the end of the round, and also to build monuments. I have a separate issue with the monuments in 2 players at least. What the inventions do is they save you on having to go out with people. So when you think about it in the long run, I'll just give you one card, for example, this guy over here. Now, this image up here is just for fun. This is really what it's all about. This is saying 2 times when you're processing food, you can process up to 2 fish into kind of like a treat version of fish. Now they use a lot of different names in the game, which is cool. Uluk, I think, is one of the foods, and there's like fried uluk and all of this stuff. And it's kind of hard to remember all of that stuff. There's meat and there's fish and there's roots, and I kind of almost wish they would have just called it that. But I understand they're trying to create this whole universe of these characters, which is cool. And the game looks cute. I know I'm going in 18 directions here, but look, just bear with me. The game looks very cute, but it's not a cute game. It's not like, oh, I do this and do this. It is a punishing game, especially if you make a couple of mistakes. You don't feed your people, you're going to get lots of negative points, and there's no way of getting rid of them, and that can kill the game for you. But these inventions are critical because think about it. I could have used one of my tribe members to do this every round, but if I get if I get one of these inventions, well, now I'm saving the use of one of my tribe members, who I think they call them tribers in the game, which I think is a funny word. You're not going to have to deploy them every round. It's your invention that's used every round if you so need it, and they could be extremely, if you can figure out which ones are going to be most beneficial to you. Some of them just give you extra points for doing something, but to me the ones that are most important are every time I would this is another processing one. If I get this slug, this worm, I forget what it is, you could process it one time during the processing phase. Now there's tip number one. Which is you need to have inventions. That should have been very clearly stated in the rule book, that is the way forward. You can't really do much in the game without having the inventions. Number 2 is understanding your player board. Now, here's an example of one of the player boards, and they all look. There's 4 different player boards that you could choose from. They all look almost identical. There's just a couple of little differences here and there. And you have to understand which ones are how they're just a little bit different. Like for an example, this one, meat, when it's processed, so the symbol here means that it is perishable. So if you don't use it by the end of the round, it just goes away. This orange symbol means that it is non-perishable. So if you can process this meat into non-perishables, you can keep them there, meaning you can feed your people later on in the game. You don't have to keep on doing this. You can kind of store up some stuff and use it later on. No other player has this ability, no other character, but maybe another character has a different ability. I can't remember all of the various ones. And there's different ways of getting certain things. Everyone can get the same 5 or 6, rather, the same 6 basic items that could feed people. These 3 are food. These 3 are not food for the most part. They have to be processed into food or to other things. This is not food either. This is called celebration material or something. It's a funny word, but it can't be used as food, but it can be used as celebrations. So understanding your player board, and it's an economic game. It's basically an economic game. There's a changing economy on the board of what's available and how you can get it, and using your various cards to get a little bit more stuff. Like, for example, this card with the sickle going through the meat. Every time you get meat, you're going to get an additional meat. No matter how many people go here, you're going to get one additional meat. So that's, and if you are going to be using it here and processing it, and then it becomes permanent or non-perishable, that's for this player's advantage. So you have to think about which inventions you want. And in a two-player game, there's only two inventions that come out every round. So if you grab those inventions, you're using your people to get the inventions, but you're going to save time in the long run, even if maybe you end up with a little bit of negative on the round. It's very thoughtful. I could sit there for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, well, maybe not 3 minutes, but with my meeple and with my tribe member and thinking, what space do I need to go to? And I'm calculating. You're calculating. How much food do I have? How much am I going to need at the end of the round? How much do I think people are going to, does she want that same thing? Because then I'll need to put another person there. There's a psychological warfare going on in the game, but you got to get an economy moving, because at the end of the round, if you have extra stuff, you can get another tribe member, or you can have a celebration, which is where points are. And that should have also been emphasized. There's a motorcycle going by. I'm doing this outdoors because my son's inside playing video games and stuff, and my wife's doing work, so I'm outside. So there's a motorcycle. You have to figure out what your economy is going to be and how to move forward with it, because then if you have even extra people, you can then go up and help build monuments, which are points as well. And that should be, there's only a few ways of really getting significant amount of points in the game. And that's where I feel the rule book again lacks. There's a lot of stages. There's a lot of things to do. And look at the back cover. Beautiful art. But I think this cover, or the back cover, could have been used as a player aid slash, key things to think about, some iconography, remembrance, so you're not having to go through the rule book. Luckily, someone who I became fast friends with on BGG made a player aid and it's posted there as a file, so you can check that out too. It works perfectly. There's not that much information to really have. It's just using it correctly. This is really one of my favorite economic games. It's basically what it is. It looks fun and cute, but it's an economic, and it's tight, and could be punishing. No, so who would like this game, and what other games would someone, is this a kind of game for you? Immediately when I was playing it, and this is I rate this game around an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10 right now. Really, really great design. So I brought out a couple of things here. This is a game called Otis, and you're diving in the ocean, and then you're using different characters to manipulate tiles to just move cubes around just a little bit so they all line up, and then boom, it's a puzzle game basically, and you have to think in advance and calculate things and worry about what someone else is doing. I think it's the only design by this designer. I got it a number of years ago, and there's nothing I have that's like this. It fills a niche. It fills and it works great with two. So if you like puzzle games, now I don't want to scare people away with the term economics, but that's basically it's a Euro economic game. Who else would like a game like this? Here's a game that I played only recently that I really enjoyed, Golem, by well-known Italian designers, Brasini, Luciani, and Gigli. And the issues, the similarity I find between this game and with Uluk is that in the beginning of Golem, you're just hanging on. You're barely starting something. You don't have anything much going, and you wonder by the end of the game, how am I going to achieve anything? But as the rounds go by, you start saying, okay, now I've got something going, and I have a clear direction. Now I can start doing more things. It's a very satisfying feel, even though ultimately in Golem, there's only a few things that you really can do. You're not finding out new ways of scoring points. There's only a handful of ways, but every game, and even though it's all laid out and it's kind of the same every game, it feels very different from game to game. That's how I felt with Uluk. I felt, okay, huh. Well, again, I go back to that first time I played it, and I'm, putting a couple guys out and getting some food, processing, and I was like, this isn't really that much fun. But then I realized, well, wait a minute. If I can do this and then that, I could do this more. Now, the situation at the beginning of the game is just slightly different. Everyone's player board is just slightly different. The cards that can come out might change things up. The order in which the monuments are revealed that you can build might just edge up one of the food items availability just a touch. All of these little tiny nuanced things are extremely important. And also you're thinking about everyone gets a secret recipe for the end of the game. And if you have these couple of items on the board and you think, oh, well, it's just 2 items. I can get 2 items on the board. And if I do it twice, I get 8 points in a game where you're getting I was getting around 50 both games. My wife was getting in the upper 30s and into the 40s. It ain't easy because of what specifically there is, and does it work with what my economy is? It's what available, and it's also late in the game, and I have to feed my people before I have it. Very neat, kind of long-term thoughts. But I say, if you're playing this for the first time, don't really think about, this is my tip, don't think about your recipe card until maybe round 4. You're not even have to think about it that long in advance. You're trying to build up interesting inventions that click together. Maybe I go here and that gets me a fish, and then I have another card that I can just process that fish. I don't even need people to do it for me. Inventions, really, really important to the game. Getting new tribe members. Yes, you're going to have to feed them, but everyone's going to be doing something. So it's valuable. If you can get a couple of members, maybe not by round 2, but by round 3, round 4, and you're filling it out, because you also can use them to build the monuments. Now that's one of the things I didn't, since I'm outside, I don't have the game, I have it still set up on the table. We're going to play it a whole bunch of times to really get into the whole thing. Maybe see, okay. So here you could see in the rules, this is what the board looks like. And these are the spaces where you're going to be putting your tribe members to get food. On this side, whoever has the most tribe members gets the better number. Whoever has the less amount of tribe members, no matter how many you have, gets the lower number. If you're tied, you both get the lesser amount. On this side, the fish and the meat, whoever, for as many people as you put there, or poison markers, which is a nice way of doubling up your people, you can get a lot of food this way because you can't get kind of pushed out from this. And then this area is where you're going to be processing things. So that's where you're going to be moving the things that you got down to the next levels. And yeah, early in the game, it's a little bit of a slog. You got to use tribe members to do all of these various things. But yeah, inventions will speed up the game for you. Inventions. That should be my the Justin Rubin tip is inventions. So here's the issue with the monuments. And now in the game, every round you're going to be flipping one of the tokens over, and you could put tribe members there. And if the tribe members fill up, once they're filled up, either you or both people or whatever, immediately whatever ingredient is there will go up in value. And sometimes what's there is not really needing to go up in value. Now, you notice that in the early rounds, it's 2s and 3s, but in the later rounds, it's a lot of people. And so every time we've played, with 2 players, unless I miss something in the instructions, which is entirely possible, nothing is covered up. It's still that same amount of people that are needed. So typically in the 2 games we've had maybe to the 3. I don't think we've had one of the 4s covered. We're just still working on this and trying to feed the people and trying to make celebrations where to get a lot of points. Although this is something that we need to explore more. Maybe in 3 and 4 players, these things get built more often. They're standees, but of course I made the minis are just absolutely great. They're solid, they're clear, they're pretty. I love the minis. I'm very glad I painted them because this is a keeper, by the way. This game. Yeah, I wish there was tips. I wish there was a summary of all of the icons and in the game, also in the rules. descriptions, visual descriptions, with arrows. This happens, now this happens, rather than it just always being words with a couple of illustrations. It needs to be more illustrated, in my opinion. Uh, so these little dishes, that's very cute. This is all of your food. No matter where it is, it's whatever it happens to be. That's similar if you know the game Agra, one of my all-time favorite games. Wherever your marker is what the item is, wherever it happens to be. They fit on the board nicely, right? Until you get a whole bunch of them. And then you're trying to count, oh, do I have 6 of those? Uh, what was that game? Terraforming Mars, the Ares Expedition, where you have little cubes, 3s and 5s, that represent the items. I feel almost maybe little yellow cubes would have worked better, so you could just see what you have a little bit more. The board size is great. The table presence is wonderful, and it doesn't take up, like, some of these modern games, enormous amounts, and you're barely fitting yourself in. Do you hear me, Perseverance? Although I love that game, and I love those games that do take up, or Tricarian, with expansions, and I have to have other tables and chairs, and I'm balancing things on my head just to figure out what's going on. I wish it was maybe just a touch bigger to fit these cute tokens in, or to make cubes, or maybe just like half and half with it. Maybe some little player aid on the thing. I don't know. But I do. It's good. It's not anything wrong. And the art, again, I have to say, stellar artist. It's such neat. And my wife's favorite animal is the hippo, so she got to play the hippo in our first game. The expansions. Oh, I'll talk about the expansions. Oh, there was another negative. So everyone gets these tokens. I was the purple character of the first game, and this is your score marker. They don't fit. They're too big for the score track that goes around the board. The art on the board is great. I mean, I want to say that the game designer, the artists, the production of the game, everything is stellar. There's just some little size issues. It's kind of too big, and I hate it when I'm deeply in thought with a game, and I'm somewhere, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, is that on the 6 or the 7? Right? So I replaced them. I have these little clear plastic doodads, these little guys. Could be really anything, right? I got them from Game Crafter. They're really inexpensive, and the what you would say the amount of surface it takes up is, of course, a lot less, and therefore I'm able to see what I have. I'm kind of thinking of doing the same thing. I do have a whole bunch of yellow cubes somewhere. I'm thinking of replacing these with the yellow cubes, the clear yellow cubes, just because, just because it might be a little bit easier for me to see them. Especially later on in the game, you can get tons of food later on in the game. I almost feel like, ooh, if I just had that food one round earlier, I could have gone up and built one of the big monuments for like 1,000,000 points, and then just fed people later on. I do have the expansions as well. So there's 2 expansions, and there is Ancestral Spirits and Wrath of the Gods. There's a cup there in this box. There are cards that reward you differently than in the game if you build a monument, and also punish you if you punish the group if you haven't built monuments. And I'm worried in a 2-player game where the most monuments we've built was 3 out of 6, that now some of the punishments are sometimes just clouds, meaning nothing happens to you, but some of them can really alter the game quite significantly. So we haven't played with these as of yet, although the positives, like if you do build a monument, some of them can be really neat. I look through the deck of cards. What happens if you do build it? Okay, it doesn't, because sometimes, and I think this is some of the monuments that aren't built yet, if you build them, it moves markers up. But if they're already up on the highest, rank, and there's only 3 ranks, you're not getting any kind of benefit from building it, even if you could build it that round. It's at the end of the game for having it. And then in the second game, I actually built all three of the 6, and was quite satisfied with that. Although I did the ones that were 2s and 3s, not the larger one. The other box is cool. There is an area on the board The two areas that I'm talking about are here and here. Normally, when you go to the shaman, and this is a very cool space, you get a point, but you're also the last player to move, no matter what turn order you are in. So after everyone has done everything, you can now mess with people's space. But with ancestral spirits, when you go there, you also get a card. Did I bring out one of these? Oh, I did. They look like this. Kind of matches the figure there. Uh-oh, dropped the card. Nothing. And so in this one, if you have 12 of either this or this, depending on which board you have, it might be this or it might be that. Sometimes your boards don't have every food available. So this could be late in the game. There was one card that I had, which if I had 3 celebratory materials, I can score, I think it was 5 points or something. And I have the stuff to make a celebration, which is important. That should be one of Justin Rubin's key tips. You got to have celebrations in the game. You got to celebrate. You got to get a lot of points doing that. But I didn't use them, and my wife was like, "Well, why aren't you? You have enough for your celebrations. Why aren't you having a celebration?" I got reasons. It's because if I had 3 celebration materials unspent, I can show a card and get some extra points, and then say, "Having a celebration now." Uh, the other deck of cards that's in Ancestral Spirits is for the temple, and you're going to get these. They're cards. I don't have them with me out here. They have little question marks on them, basically, and it's ways of right before one of the stages in the game, right before you're I think after you're doing all of the errands, we're putting out all the people, everyone can take a turn and like reveal cards, and it kind of changes what's going on the board. Uh, it could be take that. It could be a lot of take that depending on the cards. And my wife was a little bit reticent on employing those, especially with the tightness of the structure of the game. However, I think there's no reason if you do have the cards because it gives a little bit of direction. Maybe your secret recipe you need at the end of the game, which could be a way for you to kind of think ahead. This is sort of hey, and if you get 2 or 3 of them in the game, it's a good strategy, by the way, going to that spot and waiting for everyone else to go because you get a card. And maybe you've got the stuff, or maybe you're close to it. It's a little bit of luck there. There's a little bit of luck in the game, sure, but which inventions come out. Maybe the inventions all lock together for you. Maybe they don't. What the situation is in the beginning of the game. Nonetheless, uh, overall, the game is right between like an 8.5 and a 9 for me, maybe 8.75 right now. We're going to play it a bunch more times. And I'm always happy to respond to people with questions on how to play the game. Since I think I have a good grasp on it, and I think the rules are lacking just a little bit. Just a little bit. They state what's happening. It's like reading I don't know, like a law journal or something. It states what's going, but it doesn't maybe clearly state what's the most important things. How can you focus, especially for early players? If you like, I'll remember that with, what this game reminded me of a little bit was Arc Nova. The first time I played Arc Nova, I built everything on my zoo board, but I didn't do any of the, what was it? Just do. Um, Had I known that you have to do both of these things to be successful, that's what I felt like in this one also. And my wife, I think, felt more than I did. In the first game, I'm feeding my people, but what am I doing here? And okay, I need to get an economy with these inventions. Uh, I've spoken enough about it. I like this game very much. It's going to be a keeper. I'm going to give it an 8.75. That's my final rating in a 2-player game. I know this one's been long, but great first design. Hope to see more from this designer. Been long, but great first design. Hope to see more from this designer. See you all later.